You're listening to Generation AI
from LivePerson.
Hello, Generation AI listeners. It is your host, Nirali Amin, and I have a very special guest today that I can't wait to all of you to hear from. Spoiler alert, he invented the term conversational commerce. So he's really defined the space we all know is getting more and more important day by day. But before we kick off, please take a moment to hit our subscribe button and leave us a 5-star rating if you already haven't done so. We're always interested in your feedback and recommendations. Now, it is time to welcome our guest today. Today, I'll be speaking with Dan Miller, the founder and longtime leader of Opus Research. Dan recently transitioned into an emeritus analyst role, so it's a great time to catch up with him about the trends, the insights, and all of the new items on his mind, and more importantly, what he thinks we should be looking closely moving forward. So let's jump in. Welcome to Generation AI, Dan. Such a pleasure to have you on board.
Thanks, Nirali. And for any Chris Messina fans out there who also claims to have coined conversational commerce, we sort of settled on, he has a definition that is surrounding, messaging platforms and their role in supporting commerce. And I've always taken, when I coined the term way back when, this idea that there are technologies that improve conversations between and among individuals and between and among people and machines, and that in turn cascades into improving better conversations, provide for better commerce, and that just sort of means the interactions and transactions that are made possible over networks. So there's an intersection there, and we can both claim it.
I love that clarification because what we stand at LivePerson is very much about that intersection and how do we make the dialogue or the outcome so much better for the end consumer. So I have a few questions for you, but let's start with your history. As the founder of Opus back in the 80s, you've documented decades of customer experience change. Through your reports, research, you've really defined this conversational commerce space that companies like ourselves, LivePerson, play in. So tell me, when did you start to see AI as the disruptor in the industry? And why did you see that happening?
Sure. And qualifying once again, I don't like the term disruptor. It smacks of destruction of sorts, but I understand it from the competitive point of view or the positioning point of view. Where we've regarded AI and seen an evolution, if you will, of technologies that probably started in the 60s with neural networking before there was deep neural networking, with natural language understanding and that sort of stuff. It's really been an enhancer rather than a disruptor, and where Opus has tried to raise awareness is not so much about sort of destroying the past way of doing things, but using these new technologies and new capabilities that computers and improved networks bring to enhance our lives, to augment ourselves. And I think that's proven to be true, and more so than ever in the past couple of years since they lifted the hood off of Chat GPT or GPT-3, which what was going on then, and we discovered, hey, just doing something like a simple search can be enhanced by these large language models that are able to sort of take so much more knowledge than I myself as a researcher could absorb, to at least come up with a draft of something that improves my own performance or an individual's performance. And we've seen that in contact centers. We've seen that across the boards, as there's an AI layer to the solution stack that all the technology providers out there are bringing to market at this point.
Yeah, I love that definition and how you articulate it back to, not being a disruptor, but in evolution. I am a firm believer that evolution is all about empowerment. It is more about making, whether it's the agents in the contact center, more empowered to give the right answer to get to a faster resolution, or as an individual who's seeking some answers out there in the big um, www network that we live in, to get the right answer. And you don't have to sift through tons of information out there. You may not have all the right information, but at least it's a starting point for you to get get the right narrative that you were looking at. So when you think about the AI for the enterprise, especially when we just talk about the evolution, you've identified over the last few decades, a few key profiles of vendors in this space. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you see them playing a role in helping an enterprise drive that evolution, or provide moments of empowerment?
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it. But so when we started, and I think we did our first report on what we were calling enterprise intelligent assistance probably back in 2013. And we were focused on what I think we would call today pure plays, meaning the firms that had tools and platforms to build chatbots or voice bots or speech enable IVRs and that sort of thing. So, what we were seeing, and I think LivePerson was a great example, is there were some specific use case areas. In your case, handling conversations with customers coming through over messaging channels, that you could build dialogue modules around, or build a corpus of correct answers that just sort of made it easier for a live person or an intelligent assistant, a virtual assistant, to respond more quickly, to respond more accurately. But it created a set of problems around, not live person, but this approach created a set of problems for enterprises, because they would have, from other pure plays, there were some that concentrated on the mobile virtual assistants. There were some that were building Q&A bots on the website. So we saw the next group of solution providers looking at supporting a platform that could feed intelligent assistance across the most appropriate medium at the time. So these were, these could be from the contact center community, they could be from CRM, but it was a matter of integrating, of recognizing what a single, they like to say single source of truth, but sort of a resource that had the right answers, and then to render that in the course of a conversation as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And then the world changed 2.5 years ago. Like I said, when ChatGPT reared its head, when some of the, whether it's Google or OpenAI or Meta, or just go down the list, there's a set of solution providers that's saying, hey, there's this new generation of Gen AI or LLM infused solution providers, and they kind of obviate the need for some of the really labor intensive heavy lifting that has to be done in order to ingest and involve that, all the realm of digital knowledge in order to render correct answers, and then leapfrog that and say, we don't need the whole foundation model or frontier model or whatever they want to call it to answer questions about specific industries, about specific accounts, about specific individuals. And that's where we are right now, where there's companies like LivePerson that have the benefit of carried out conversations with correct answers over a number of years, and say, hey, what's really important is having domain specific, business specific, customer specific data to weave into the answers that are provided. So it's very organic. There's some counsel that a company like Opus can provide that to enterprise decision makers, saying, "Hey, you you need to rely on, or you need to choose a solution provider you work with to do a lot of that heavy lifting about the shortest path from a customer's question or a topic to getting the correct answer to that."
You raise a very valid point, and I think you'd be really happy to know that we at LivePerson have recognized that and have become a lot more cognizant about the integration and the orchestration of generative AI and other automations and other data sets, as you called it, to ensure that the right channel is supported with the right answer. So it's almost like you're saying there's that seamless, continued conversation experience that is happening. So the customer doesn't feel this patchy, stop start engagement. Not saying we're completely there yet, but we have very consciously changed our model because the past 2.5 to 4 years have shown us that the customer journey is no longer linear, or there was this perception that the customer journey is linear, and there was a very heavy lens towards just either voice or digital. But as the world evolves, as customer expectations evolve, customers are choosing the channel of choice based on their time constraints, based on their situations, based on the consumer's or the brand's policy and processes. So there has to be an application layer that is helping orchestrate the right outcome.
Absolutely. And I mean, the team at Opus, I think we started articulating that probably in the same time frame, maybe a little bit before. But the whole idea of defining conversational commerce, what the assumption there was, rather than a customer journey, the best model for serving a customer is regarded as an asynchronous conversation over time, and over with a number of moments that happen during that conversation where you enable your customer or prospect to use their channel of choice and their time of choice. But it's really part of this ongoing conversation, like I was saying, and that's a way to frame it. And LivePerson has understood that, as you mentioned, and that it orchestration is a big part of it, but uh, it and actually use the other term is that you called it empowerment. What we've always said is that, hey, don't think of it as B2C. This is from the business to the person. Think of it as C to B, which is you'll start thinking about, oh, uh, when a contact comes in, regardless of the channel that's being used, what's important to do is identify with confidence that, hey, this is that person. Call up their history, know, and sort of create the right context at that moment to provide the best answer. And coming around full circle, employing something like a domain specific language model to be ready with the right, to actually initially to recognize the intent really quickly, is a lot more routine. And then matching that intent with the set of answers or responses, or even transferring to a person correctly, is easier now. Should be with the new technologies that are coming around.
Customer centricity at its best, thinking about customer first and then building backwards versus all about technology first. I love that. That leads us to another question that I have for you. When it comes to vendors, partners, whatever you may want to call it, a lot of thought leaders in this industry come to us and share what they think their enterprise leaders are not getting, right? About AI or CX. I think that is very well documented out there. What I don't think there's enough talk about or documentation is exactly what you just said. So I want to switch that thought process up for a second and say, what do you think that AI vendors are not getting it through their thick skulls, if I may want to call it, about being customer centric? What are they missing?
And I know we didn't plan this conversation in advance, but you stole some of my thunder when you said, "Hey, they're selling technology." Uh, that's the big mistake that most vendors have is that um, they're they're trying to distinguish their approach by the technologies they are using, and we are in a domain where, yes, there are differentiators around, um, the number of parameters your model can support, or the size of your database, or the amount of investment you've made in your your server farms to, deliver the new stuff. And we're just starting to see the realization that no, we're not selling. Well, you always hear this. They always say they're not selling technology, but guess what? They're selling technology. But what what will happen in very short order is, as this stuff becomes real, and it's getting in the critical path between your best customers and you, that becoming results oriented, meeting business objectives, or meeting a new set of key performance indicators is going to evolve very quickly. But even at that, it's been a really slow process. So the um, the I'll say there's so that's the major mistake. You're not selling technology. That sounds a little trite. But you're also trapped by trying to decide which persona within an enterprise you need to be selling to. Once you get sort of, oh, I'm results oriented. Well, there's the first generation of intelligent assistants, as I mentioned, sort of happened with among what you'd call shadow IT. They were departmental. It was in the mobile people. It was in the contact center. It was largely done outside of the uh, the word is not coming to my head, but it's outside of the control of centralized IT, and it wasn't absorbed into that level of implementation that could support the sort of orchestration that you're talking about. Did was a mobile agent just duplicating, was it programmed to do a task and then be done with it? Or, how do you how do you support stuff where, it comes in mobile on one day because that made sense for the person using it, but then that same person showed up and wanted to pick up that conversation over on the website. um, you know how could initially that wasn't really possible because there were just too many different initiatives going on. So we've seen the buyer persona, and Opus used to sort of punt when people were saying, "Oh, who are the buyers?" And you say, "Oh, it's a team. There's somebody from CX, there's somebody from marketing, there's somebody from the contact center." Um, and the whole procurement process would bring in legal and all that sort of stuff. So solution providers were trying to serve too many masters, and now we're seeing two very positive things happen. At the C level, there's major there's sort of the overall question of, hey, what's our strategy for Gen AI? And then that brings it to IT, who would work with the different departments as constituents, but need to bring sort of a holistic solution, which is possible now, and we're seeing more and more of that. But what uh, I won't say they were getting it wrong, because they were being pragmatic, but you would make your sales into the departmental level, because that's where there were budgets, there were documented results. They tended to be old guard KPIs, and now I think we're going to see stuff move to more centralized and more results oriented, more business objective oriented, and also with attention to improving CX, which is ultimately what we're trying to do here.
When I think about the journey that I've personally been through it as someone who's led digital transformation programs in a previous life, and someone at LivePerson now is helping customers think through some of that, it's so clear that AI or elements of AI were previously seen as a tack on or an add-on, or something like, let's start something quick and dirty and see if it resonates, if it works. Like a side hustle, a side project. And what's becoming more and more apparent is that a core architectural strategy is also needed, as you pointed out, for this to be successful, if if brands are serious about truly elevating customer experience, agent experience, and business outcomes. There is so much in terms of the outcomes that you talked about, the results, that it's again, the old world of just maybe cost efficiency is no longer enough. There is so many more elements that need to be thought through, that talk about the results, and that personas, I think, need to be also shifting their mindset. So this leads me to the next question that is, I don't think I've got an answer to. So I'm really, really curious to see how you think about this. Is, as you go through this evolution, I use the word evolution again, with AI, and going from a niche spend or a niche project in a business to getting it into the core architecture, there's been a lot of mixed feedback in the industry, frankly speaking. Some are obviously all in, some are skeptical, some are waiting to see what others have. But you've talked to a lot of leaders. What are the main challenges that they've expressed to you? And, you know, how did they and us, who are willing to help them see this through, navigate it together?
that Wow, that's depending on how big you think the market is for Gen AI. That's your 200 your $3 trillion question here. Um, uh, I early on I listened to, as you said, a lot of the leaders, a lot of the people who are going to shape this, and I wrote an essay saying, hey, Gen AI needs a gap year, and by that I meant uh, I was guilty of anthropomorphizing a technology. Here's Gen AI. I think of it as a lifelong learner, and just sort of this entity that's wandering and just absorbing everything and learning in and of itself and evolving. And I wasn't in the camp that was saying, hey, let's touch the brakes on development or anything like that. I was just sort of saying, hey, step back. We're maybe 3 years into a lifelong process for this thing, but let's say a 10-year technology plan. um, you need to decide, if you're an enterprise, or you're in finance, you're a retailer, whatever. You need to sort of step back and say, I don't have to be an expert or follow the horse race of whose model is faster at responding or doing X, Y, and Z. you need to pick a solution, a technology solution provider that's more like a partner during this period of uncertainty when the technology is refreshing itself weekly, and sort of separate. I'll call it noise, but it's not really noise. There is a value to the people that are monitoring, um, which model is best. Figuring out what's the fit to purpose and price, size to purpose model that solves a business's specific use case. But to do that within the context of, hey, I'm gonna, I'll choose my solution provider now. We have an understanding that we don't know what this stuff costs quite yet. There are, the tire kit, the developers, the citizen developers that were defining the early stuff have now moved in to work closely with IT, and they're discovering things like, hey, you can ask the same question to GPT 4.0 on Tuesday and get this answer, and ask it on Thursday and get that answer. And your legal department is going to say, hey, that's not explainable. You're not going to put that into production, are you? And you're going to figure out what the first order problems are for successfully implementing these fast changing technologies. And it's early days. That, another sort of anodyne comment is that, hey, this, we're just starting this right now. And to your point about, I started as a technology analyst in 1980, founded Opus in 86. Technologies refresh themselves at a snail's pace. I could think of myself as a, sort of somebody with a view of the future that was helpful because I could sort of predict. And, a lot of, talking to leaders were people saying, okay. And then, about 2 years ago, it went from what are you talking about to how do I do this? And that's a very different question. And that's where we're at is the stuff got real really quickly. And now there's a mandate to move it from the you were in the digital transformation group at some previous company, and that was something of a sandbox. But the speed that you move from sandbox to critical path with customers is not very long anymore.
I love the concept of gap year, and I think the way I look at it is exactly what you said, is the innovation, or at the speed of innovation in generative AI, is no longer at a snail's pace. There is something that is emerging very quickly. So I appreciate the message that we also tell our customers is pick the right partner, pick a partner that's going to support you in this long term, because it is all about starting and in helping them re-educate their teams, not just from risk and compliance frameworks to ensure it's the partner that is going to support them long term, but it's a mindset shift that all parts of their business have to go through. And you, as much as you want results from day one, as much as you want to change the world at an accelerated pace, you have to also acknowledge that there are trial and error in this capability, and you have to build your plan that is a long-term plan that is going to help you embed this technology at the right level, which is going to yield the right results for you. And it's okay to fail, but fail fast, learn fast, and go with this, because you cannot move at a snail's pace at the same time. Because if you're going to take 9 months to a year just to get your risk and compliance or your IT teams ready, you are already behind the pack. So there's that balance between speed, innovation, and change management.
I couldn't agree more. And the one thing that is implicit in what you're saying is that we humans are the gating factor here. Maybe it's risk and compliance, but from the beginning, this is it's not just a choice of technology or readying for these new or it is readying for the new technologies, and that is getting buy-in or getting participation from every single persona, if you will, within the organization, across agents, across customers, across management, the whole deal. So that's what change management is, and that is the biggest challenge.
Spot on. So, as someone who has always been a thought leader in this, as you said, from the time you started in the 80s to there, you have published a lot of stories. You've always been a thought leader on what the world is, what is going to be changing, what kind of cutting edge capabilities are coming out. What has got you excited? Voice AI, virtual reality, personal AI shoppers, maybe? What's on the horizon, and how should we start thinking about what's coming next week, next month?
Yeah. Right. So, wow, you talked to my two hot buttons are the voice AI, because I've been a voice person. I started, studying enhanced phone stuff, and that was all voice. And I think things have come around, and it is at that intersection of voice AI and personal AI that I think we're going to see a lot of activity. And in a way that is responsive to individuals, recognizes their identity, brings huge elements of our own identity into our use of our own personal agents. And it's not next week, because there's some architectural issues in how and where, like, your own personal data can reside, and how I should say not your, our preferences, our history, what's in our wallet, literally, is made relevant to interactions we have with our own AIs. And yeah, that's another thing. But I think that's where a lot of activity should start right now, or it has started right now that I know of. And it's going to have great impact in healthcare, in all sorts of retail, in some of the low-hanging fruit in travel and hospitality. But all these ones where a business has our profile and it's only relevant when we're interacting with them. What if I had control of all of that and figured out how to, with the help of my own personal agent, how I handle the businesses that I want to do business with. And I think that's the next really hot area to look at.
What's going to be key to that, I think, is unified analytics, right? And having that consistent customer experience, or what we call it as the continued connected experience, because we talked about this channel of choice at any given point in time, and the data that will power the intent, power the outcome, and power the empowerment of the end user or the supported agent through this process. Dan, thank you so much. I wish we had more time. I feel like I could spend hours with you on talking about this topic. I've loved it. I think for our listeners, very important that, as Dan mentioned, change management, one, will be critical to success. Second, think thoughtfully about who you're bringing and partnering with this in this space, and allow time to learn from it and build upon it so the right outcomes are delivered for you. And don't think about those outcomes in a very singular manner. I think the outcomes of the worlds of today have multiple lenses. So, Dan, thank you once again. What an
Thank you.
amazing 30 minutes with you.
Yeah. Yes, this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, now, wait, before you go, there's one thing that I've been told that has to be a fun segment. So before we bring this to close, it's called our Hype It or Hate It segment. Our producer will put a 60 seconds on the clock for each one of us to rant or rave. The rules are quite simple. It can be a positive or an area of improvement about something in the world of AI or business. But we only have 60 seconds to explain what's got us heated or we're loving this week. So, you ready?
Yes, he said with some consternation.
All right. So yes, as Nirali says, I will be keeping you honest with the time. So I'm going to put 60 seconds on the clock. Nirali, we will start with you. So you will have 60 seconds to hype or hate something. I will let you know when you have 30 seconds left, and then when you have 10 seconds left, and then once time is up. So with that being said, are you ready?
Let's go.
All right. 60 seconds on the clock, and your time starts now.
Dan, one thing I would love for AI to solve for is government or paperwork challenges. DMV, as an example, has a lot of things online, but when you try and solve for it, their default is called the 1-800 number. And that 1-800 number, believe it or not, the message says, we will try and get back to you on Monday between 12 and 2 p.m. And if we don't, we will return your call in
30
3
seconds.
business days. So my rant here is governments, utility companies, folks that support us on our day-to-day lives need to do better with digital and need to start incorporating AI to make the customer experience better. There you go. That's my 60-second rant.
Oh, wow. You have 10 seconds to spare. Dan, we also want to give the other person a chance to weigh in on that. So do you have any response or any thoughts on Nirali's contribution?
Well, you hit the nail on the head with government, and I honestly think you'll see great strides. Ironically, over the weekend, or just this week, it's beginning that, and it's only relevant for old people like me. The DMV here has said that people over 70 no longer have to to renew their licenses, no longer have to do the knowledge test. They just sort of assume that if you've been driving for this long, uh, you're good to go. And yeah, it has nothing to do with. I mean, government does try to be more efficient, and yeah, wish us all luck.
All right. So now, Dan, it is your turn to hype or hate on something. So same deal. I will put 60 seconds on the clock. I will let you know when you have 30 seconds left, and then when you have 10 seconds left, and when your time is up. So are you ready? All right. 60 seconds on the clock, and your time starts now.
So Nirali, I'm picking what's being called agentic AI as something that I both hype and hate. um, it seems like there's two flavors of it, but the gist is that these agents are becoming more and more autonomous. So these virtual agents that you use can become more and more autonomous, and at the developer level, it means that it shortens the time it takes to make a new agent, and it can sort of go off on its own and say, oh, I need to build an API to do this, so you can do more than check your balance transfer or whatever in finance or something like that. But then we as people have to grok
10 seconds left.
when it's it's okay that it goes off and does stuff on its own. So that's it's a quandary, and we need to sort it out.
All right. Nirali, any thoughts?
Wow, what a heavy question, or a rant or a rave at the same time. I think a lot of frameworks, a lot of checks and balances need to be put on the agentic AI. It, just like any technology, it has its pluses and minuses. And I think it can be such a powerful tool if the right frameworks, the right engagement from a human element was brought in, so it doesn't become more autonomous or robotic, because that is actually the downside of it, that we've made so much strides to make AI conversational, more human-like, more empathy. And if you leave them alone to start doing these processes or rebuilding things without any of that human lens to it, I agree with you that it will be some challenges. So my ask for anyone out there who's thinking about this and working on this, please have the right frameworks and please don't lose the human element that comes into this. Before we wrap, for those listening, please subscribe to our channel, rate it, give us feedback. If you have any comments, if you would like to listen to other topics, we're more than happy to support and look at them. Dan, thank you so much once again for joining us for this segment. It was such a pleasure having you on with us. And I'm hoping that we get to learn from you more and more in the near future.
Thank you. This was a real pleasure.
You've been listening to Generation AI,
Automating Better Business,
a show from LivePerson.
Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. Please give us a rating, leave a comment, and share the episodes you love. Until next time.